Welcome back, CSC 230 to part 6 of our EX17, which is basically doing our mobile layout of exercise 16. So that's what we're working on. This is the 6th video. The first one was the overview, then we did the header, then we did the nav, then we did this section, and then we started doing the JavaScript for this part here so that it actually showed up and actually working. So for this part, we're going to hopefully finish things off and tweak things a little bit, because where we're at is at this point where we actually have it working and we actually have this script working. A couple things, I'll make hover states for this so it looks a little nicer. We'll make that wider and we'll put in a refresh script, which we already have. We just have to make sure we link to jQuery because it's actually jQuery, and then we should be good unless we have any other tweaking. And if there's any other tweaking, I'll make one more video because we do have some time here at the end to do that. So I'll go back here, and before I get into the JavaScript, I'll go back to my styles and menu item, and what we can try to do is to copy this. I'm just going to copy this and put this below here, and it's nav menu item, and let's just put :hover, because remember, it's not a property, it's actually a separate state here. So we're going to change the background color of that, and let me make sure I have my curly bracket to finish it off. So we're going to do nav menu item hover, the same one as this, and this is just in the regular CSS. And let's go here and let's just darken it a little and see if that works. Let's refresh this. There, we have a hover state. I don't know if I like that color, but that's okay. That at least works. You want to lighten it up a little, you go in here, lighten it up just a little. Okay, but it works. The important thing, it works. Hover over it, it works. Okay, that looks good. So that wasn't too hard. I almost forgot how to do that. I was trying to put a property in here, but as long as you just put hover, it has to be targeting that. We don't have an A, so we can't do a.hover. We'll just do that. So again, we're just targeting it again and putting hover. So it has to be a separate property here. It has to be a separate declaration for that one. So we're just repeating it and putting :hover in there. So that's changing it, and that should go through all the way. We shouldn't have to change that again. All right, so let's see what happens now when we make it wider, because remember, we're going to make it wider. So let's go back to our JavaScript, and I mentioned instead of making this 20 rem, all that, let's just delete all these. You might be like, no, don't delete those. We'll delete all them so we don't have all this code here, and we'll do this one time. And I'm going to put I in here, and I is going to be a variable, not one, but I. So we're going to put I in here, and we're going to use something called a JavaScript. Didn't mean to do that. A JavaScript loop. There's loops in Python. You might have worked in Python and used a loop. It basically cycles through something and it counts. So what we're going to do is cycle through that. And actually, I'm going to copy this or cut this and put this first so that everything kind of goes through here. And the way this works, a loop means that everything will have to happen inside the loop. Now, I think I have a loop here. I'll just show you really quick what it looks like. The loop is going to make everything change. So the declaration is going to be outside the loop, but then the loop has its own curly braces. So we're going to run a loop in here. This is going to way it's going to work, and it's going to use this. Now, I'm just looking at this. You're like, well, how do you know that? Well, let's just look it up. So anyway, I'll go back here, and we want to loop these things. So once it finds them, it goes through and gets all of them. It doesn't do just one, because right now it was doing just one unless we put 0 and 1 and 2 and 3. So let's loop them. And let's just look for a W3 schools JS loop. It's actually a for loop, so I'll put for loop. That way we can just copy it. And here's a for loop, and it's just like this. Now it's using let instead of var. So what it does is in this loop, it sets up its own little temporary variable of I, and they always use I because it iterates, meaning it runs through it, it counts. It iterates and it starts at 0, and then as long as I is less than the length, which is how many buttons you have, how many menu items, we have 4. So as long as it's less than 4, it's going to keep adding up and keep running the loop. And then once the loop is complete, it'll stop. So that will help us do all 4 at once instead of having to copy and paste them all out. So what we'll do is we'll copy this loop here, this for loop, right like it is. And I'll go back here and I'll put it here. This is the important part. I'm going to put a curly brace and I'll hit enter, and now I'll cut this, and however you do it, you could cut the curly brace. I'm going to cut this stuff and put it inside here. because this stuff has to be in its own curly brace, and just like when we do media queries, we have to have a curly brace at the end. So make sure that you have your closing curly brace for the whole function. So there's your opening closing for the entire function, and here's an opening closing for the loop. And you could even go here and put loops through menu items. I just use / for JavaScript. So it loops through the menu items, and what's looping is these 4 things in here, and I could even tab these over. And I think I could use let in here, even though I used var up here. I could use let. And as long as I put eyes in here, it's going to do that, and it's going to cycle through. So it'll just save us a lot of code. Now, I did it the other way so you understand what we're doing, but the loop here, again, it sets a variable. It determines that it starts at less than, this is the as long as, or this is the condition. So it starts at I equals 0, and the condition is as long as I is less than the length. Now, first of all, it says cars length. Do we want cars? No. We want menu items. So let's go here and put menu items. We don't want to do that. I'd be looking up what's wrong with that. So we need that. So that's the items where they have number of, these are all the item names that are represented by this variable. So it'll go through all the menu items which have the name menu items, and make sure you have that, the list of menu items, which we determine there, and I think that should be okay. And this just keeps adding on. I++ just means it keeps adding on. It keeps adding, so after you do 0, it adds up and it goes to 1, and then it goes to 2, and then it goes to 3, and as long as, once this gets past that, then it stops. So that's the way it'll stop. That's the way a loop works. And if you ever had Python, there's loops in Python, there's loops in JavaScript. The loops in Python are actually easier, but they have for loops as well. So we're going to use a for loop here, and let's see if it works. We'll resize it, and it should just do the same thing, and it works fine. Now, if I want to make those things wider, I could just go here and make it, I don't know, 20 rem. Now that's double the size. Maybe I'll try 16 rem just to see what it looks like. Now I only have to do that one time. I'll refresh it, and I'll move it over here, and that looks pretty good. And you can make them wider. Maybe 20 would be okay. I'll go here, refresh it again. Do that. Our things work. That looks pretty nice. I mean, you could make them go all the way over if you wanted to, and maybe have no margin on them. You could, I guess. I haven't even thought about that. Basically, you wouldn't really have any, I guess you'd just do this. You wouldn't have any margin on it, and let me just comment that out. Let's see if that works. If we had no margin on it, that means outside of those things. Let's just see this. And you could do that. Now that's, did I refresh it? I'm not sure if I refreshed it. So let me make sure I did refresh it. And it's not going all the way because we may have a margin of our section area. Our section area may have a margin. And this isn't refreshing yet, so we'll fix that. And again, in our margin area, not to be jumping around, but remember our section area probably has some kind of margin on it. Our nav has 60 pixels on either side. That's where it is. So let's go down here. We could fix it here instead of section. I don't know why I'm even looking at section. That was in our nav. So we could just go to nav and put padding 0. And that should take care of it, I think. Let's see. And did I refresh it? I don't know if I refreshed it. So let me go in again. Oh, and it's messing up with that now. I mean, that looks okay, but now we have an issue with, see, I like that better. But now it's messing with the hamburger thing. So we have some issues to fix. So where's the hamburger menu? Ham item. Let's see. Top, right, bottom, left. What if I put this? What if I put the hamburger item, put like 40 pixels on that and see what that looks like? I know I'm really digging into a lot of stuff here. And I think that worked. Let me try it again. I think that worked okay once I got over here. So it's got like 40 pixels. I can make it more. I can make it 60. That way it looks a little better. And then my buttons go across the page. So I wasn't planning to do that, but let me make this 60. Add a little more to it. Hopefully you're following all this that I'm jumping around, waiting for the semester to end. So now that looks a little better. They go across the page. That might look better on a phone rather than having any margin there. So I think that looks okay. The only thing we have to do is get a refresh. Now we already did a refresh script. If you remember, if I go back to, this is Documents and Resources. This was under Unit 9. This is for EX11. And there is a refresh script here. So you can actually copy this refresh script as is and go back here. Now where would you put that? Well, you could put it in your JavaScript. We'll put it at the end of everything. And the only thing you have to remember, it's not going to work. I'm going to tell you right now, this refresh script, I'll put a little comment here. If I do it right now, if I refresh my page and I move this over and I do this, the refresh script is supposed to make it go back to normal. What should happen is the page should refresh once I resize it, and it's not. It's staying like that, and we're not getting our regular buttons back. And if you remember, one other thing we had to do was go to jQuery. So let's see where we have jQuery up here. I don't see jQuery anymore. Let's see, jQuery, and jQuery get started. You can add it to your own pages. You can download it. What I like to use is the Google Content Delivery Network, so you're getting it right from there, because you can't use jQuery just on your own. It's not built into what you're doing on your page. So all you need is this script for jQuery. I'll just copy this, and notice it's script source, not SCR, and I'm going to put that in the head tag. They tell you to put in the head tag. Even though we put our JavaScript after our body, we're going to put this here, or before our body. We're going to copy this and put this in our head tag. So we'll go back here, and that'll be on our index page. Go up to our head tag, put it right after our CSS link, and go back here, and let's refresh our entire page. And now let's resize it, and that's what we want. There's our buttons, and now if we resize it out, it's going back the way it was, and that's what we want. So that looks okay. So I think for video part 6, this is good. If you get to this point, you're pretty good. So I may do one more wrap-up video, but if you get started on this, if you do this much, you're good. So, you know, I'm sure you'll have questions. You email me. This will be our last exercise of the semester, other than our final exam and maybe another quiz and any discussions that we have, but this will be our last kind of bigger hands-on exercise. So even though the other video says that was the last one, this will be the last one. So don't just say, oh, your video said that was the last one. This is the last one. There's 6 parts. I may put a wrap up just like I did for the other one, but hopefully it's pretty all-inclusive here of kind of reviewing a lot of things that we did. And if you struggle with it, that's okay. You should. This stuff shouldn't be easy, and I have to go back and look up things again. Even doing it in the spring, I didn't remember a lot of things I did. I couldn't do it by heart. I had to go back and look at it and figure out what I was doing, and it's a lot of thinking through things. So that's what you want. So your finished product of EX16 should look like this. You should go like this and get it to here and see your little buttons, and then if you bring it out again, you should see your regular nav menu show up again. So that's all pretty cool that we started with Figma and got to that point. So you can see it's a lot of work. Web design, web layout, web development, it's a lot of work. And we only have one page here. We don't have anything below it, you know. So we have a lot going on here, but hopefully for one level of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, hopefully we got through pretty much this semester so far. So that's the end of part 6 of EX17.